Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your man, Dr. Will, and you know the deal. Let me know what city, what state, what country you are chiming in from. Even if you're watching the replay, let me know what city, what state, what country you are chiming in from. What's going on? So, guys, tonight I'm literally broadcasting from several different platforms. I'm on Periscope, I'm on Facebook, we're on Instagram. So I'm on several different platforms. So I'm going to be trying to keep up with all you guys. But hey, thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm here on the beautiful island of St. Martin. So wherever you are in the world, let me know what city, what state, what country you are chiming in from. So tonight, guys, I want to talk to you about you versus you, and how to become unstoppable. How do you become unstoppable? Are you guys ready for this? So years ago, about 20 years ago, about maybe 25 years ago, I was that individual. What's going on, Mosaic? I was that individual that blamed everything and everyone for why I wasn't succeeding in life. I blamed everybody. I blamed the fact that I was raised by a single mother. I blamed the fact that I grew up in Compton, California. I blamed the fact that I was an African-American man living in the United States and there's racism and all these different types of things. It wasn't until I began to have a paradigm shift that my life changed. It wasn't until I realized that the biggest obstacle to me achieving the success that I wanted was myself. I was the biggest obstacle. I was the biggest thing in my way. It wasn't my circumstances. It wasn't that I didn't have a father in my life. It wasn't the government. It wasn't anything like that. It was the person that I was looking at in the mirror every single day. And when I realized that, that's when I began to say, okay, I can't change that I was raised by a single mother. I can't change that I was born and raised in Compton, California. I can't change any of that. I couldn't go backwards and change anything that happened in my past. But I realized that I could change my present and impact my future. I could change my present and I could impact my future. In order to become unstoppable, you have to have a couple of paradigm shifts. You got to have a couple of paradigm shifts. The first paradigm shift that you have to have is that everything that has happened in my life, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me. It didn't happen to me, it happened for me. Many times when things happen to us, we act as if it's happening against us. But when you understand that everything, good, bad, indifferent, everything is happening for you and not against you. When I started going back in my life, whatever situations that had befallen me, I started to take on the mantra that this happened for me. And it was my responsibility to find out what I was supposed to learn from it, how I was supposed to grow from it. And once I started doing that, once I started changing my perspective, everything started to change. Now, when I say everything started to change, nothing on the outside started to change. Everything on the inside started to change. Nothing on the outside was changing. Everything was still the same. I still had the same mom, still had the same dad, still had the same circumstances. What changed was the way I began to see everything. The way I began to see everything. That it didn't happen to me. I wasn't a victim. It happened for me. And once I realized that it was happening for me, it was my job to learn. It was my job to learn the lesson. It was my job to learn the lesson. Once I got that lesson, the next lesson I got was I needed to take 100% responsibility for myself. 100% responsibility. Once I started taking 100% responsibility in terms of how I responded to everything that was happening for me in life. So number one, it's happening for me. Number two, I'm going to take responsibility for how I respond to anything that happens for me in life. Prior to that, I would say they made me do this. Well, if he didn't get on my nerves, if she didn't make me upset, I was giving away my control. Whenever you start pointing the fingers at anyone or anything, you're giving away your control. Once you realize that when you take responsibility, you now have all control. You now have all control. You get to decide if you want to go left, right, up, or down. But when you start pointing fingers and when you start blaming other people, you're giving them power. You're giving them the power over you. Because now, have you ever done this? You had a disagreement with someone, and now when you go to make moves, it's all predicated on what they're doing. Are they going to be at the party? If they're going to be at the party, I'm not going. Or are they going to be over there? If they're going to be over there, I'm not going. Now you're letting them dictate to you where you're going. Where you're going. Makeba, you brought this up. That principle right there is the principle my grandmother taught me 30 years ago, 35 years ago. I was in my house and I was running around. My cousin Michelle was chasing me, and I bumped into a lamp. I bumped into the lamp, and the lamp almost fell. When the lamp almost fell, my grandmother started screaming out, "Will, Will!" And immediately I pointed the finger at my cousin Michelle, and I said, "Grandma, Michelle's chasing me." And my grandmother stopped me and she said, "Look at you." And I said, "What, Grandma?" She says, "Whenever you point the finger at somebody, you got 3 fingers pointing back at you, meaning the responsibility is on you." I never forgot that proverb. I never forgot my grandmother saying that to me. Whenever you point the finger, you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. So the bulk of the responsibility is on you. So when you begin to take 100% responsibility, you now have the power. The third thing that I learned was this, and this is what made me unstoppable. No one could stop me from doing the things that made me better. What do I mean by that? Reading made me better. No one could stop me from reading. No one can stop me from reading. No one can say, "Will, you've read too many books. Stop reading." When I realized this, that nobody can stop me from reading. Nobody. Nobody can stop me from learning. No one can stop me from personal development. No one can say, "Will, you've developed too much." When I learned this, I became unstoppable. Why? Because I realized no one could stop me from growing. No one could suppress me. When I decided to read, I ended up reading in a 10-year span over 1,000 books. No one can stop me from doing that. No one can stop. No one. No one ever came up to me and said, "You got too many books, stop reading." I remember when I would go to the library and they would have a limit of how many books you could check out. And I would go with a stack of 10. And the lady would say, "Well, you already have 10 books out. But you know what? Go ahead. You can have these. No one's going to stop you from reading." Right? And so when I realized that no one could stop me from developing, I became unstoppable because I was doing the things that no one could stop me from doing. Did you guys catch that? I became unstoppable. This is not about you having power. This is not about you being able to beat somebody up. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you start to do the things that no one can stop you from doing, you become unstoppable. You become unstoppable. No one can stop me from smiling. No one can stop me from laughing. When I began to realize that I had the power to incorporate all these things in my life, I became unstoppable, guys. I literally became unstoppable. Like literally right now, there are 37 days left. There's 37 days left in this year. You could say for the next 37 days, I'm going to learn a new word every day. Going into 2021, I'm going to know 37 new words. Now, let me ask you something. Honestly, when is the last time you learned a new word? When's the last time you learned a new word? I want you to think about this. When's the last time you've been intentional about learning? When's the last time you've been intentional about learning? 37 days left. If you just said, "I'm going to add 37 new words to my vocabulary," no one can stop you from doing that. No one can stop you from doing that. And then you say, "You know what? I'm going to be really bold. The next 37 days, I'm going to learn a new 37 words." And then you really get crazy and you say, "The next 37 days, I'm going to learn another 37 words." In a 90-day or 100-day period, you would know 100 new words. You would know 100 new words. What would that do to your mind? What would that do to your vocabulary? What would that do to your perspective? If you added, think about when's the last time you thought about adding more words to your vocabulary? You know, they say, there's about 7,000 words, I believe, in the English language or something like that. And most of us, we hunker down on about 1,100 of them. And we just repeatedly use those 1,100 words over and over and over and over again. Everybody has about anywhere between 900 to 1,400, 1,500 words that we use, and we just use those words over and over and over. But what if you said, "You know what? In the next 100 days, I'm going to learn 100 new words." What would that do? See, nobody can stop you from doing that. When I started getting up at 3 a.m. in the morning, no one could stop me from doing that. So when you start to do the things that no one can stop you from doing, that's when you become unstoppable. That's when you become unstoppable. So when you realize this whole thing, it's about you versus you. It's not you versus anybody else. It's you versus you. You getting out of your own way. You becoming disciplined. You doing the things that make you better on a daily basis. When you start doing that, ladies and gentlemen, you become unstoppable. Like right now, if you put together a list of things that you're going to do, I'm going to read every day. I'm going to take a walk around the block. I'm going to listen to something that makes me laugh. I'm going to reach out to a family member or a friend and check on them. No one can stop you from doing these things. No one can stop you from doing these things. Nobody can stop you. The only person that can stop you is you. That's why it's you versus you. That's why it's you versus you. Discipline, consistency, intentionality. This is all things, right? You don't need any money to buy that, right? See, you become unstoppable when you put those types of concepts in your life. You don't need any money for this, to be disciplined, to be consistent, to be intentional. See, when you start doing the things that no one can stop you from doing, you become unstoppable. You become unstoppable. Do you guys understand this? When you stop focusing on, they didn't let me do this, start doing the things that no one can stop you from doing, and then you'll soon find out that nobody can stop you. That nobody can stop you. That the world becomes your playground. I read 25 years ago, I'll never forget it. I still have it. I still have the article that I read 25 years ago. It was an article by a man by the name of Jim Rohn. And in this article, Jim Rohn said, the average person, once they get out of high school or college, they do not read books anymore. Once they get out of college, they do not read books anymore. Once they get out of high school, they do not read books anymore. That's the average person. He says the above average person reads one book a year. That's what he said. The above average person reads 12 books a year, one book a month. One book a month. That's 12 books a year. I read this article. I'll never forget it. I still have the article. He says, if you want to be above average, read one book a month. He says, the really good individuals, they read 2 books a month. They read 2 books a month. He says, the exceptional individuals, they read 3 books a month. He said the world-class individuals, the top CEOs, the top athletes, the top performers, they're reading 4 books. They're consuming 4 books a month. That would be 48 books a year. He said if you read 48 books a year, 50 books a year, after 10 years, right, you would have 500 books inside of you. He said you would be world class. And I was just silly enough, 25 years ago, I was silly enough to believe him. I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. I said, you know what? I'm reading this article in Success Magazine. Here's this guy that seems like he knows what he's talking about. And he's saying, if you read, you would be world class. I said, man, I'm going to take him up on that bet. I had nothing to lose. What would have happened if he was lying? I would have ended up in the same place. I don't know. But what I started to find out was he was right. The more I started to read, the more my mind started to expand. The more my mind started to expand, the more my vocabulary started to expand. The more my vocabulary started to expand, the more my articulation started to expand. The more my articulation began to expand, the more I could relate to different types of people. The more I began to relate to different types of people were now able to relate to me. Because more people were able to relate to me, my paradigm began to broaden, my horizon began to broaden. I'm now, right, asked to come and speak all over the world. Why? Because I have a worldwide perspective. Because I'm reading all these books, so I'm learning a little bit about how they live in Ghana. I'm learning a little bit about how they live in Italy. I'm learning a little bit about how they live in India. I'm learning a little bit about how they live in Monrovia. I'm learning a little bit of how they live in Egypt. Because I'm expanding my mind. Now I can relate to other people. Because I can relate to other people, now I can go all around the world. You see? And I believed it, and it's true, guys. Here's the deal. If you could take a book, if you could take a book, right? The person who wrote this book, see this book? The person who wrote this book, they've been through some things. They've learned some things. They've experienced some things. They have some wisdom. This wisdom probably took them 20, 30, 40 years to get. But then they summarized their wisdom in this book. Now I can take this book and read it in about a week's time. What took them 20, 30 years to get, I can get it in 2 weeks. So now I not only have their experiences and their the way of mastery. The way of mastery. The author here is Shanti Cristo Foundation. Can you see that? Just Google The Way of Mastery and you'll find it. Phenomenal book. Read it every single day. But now I have the wisdom of this book and their experiences coupled with my experiences. Then I read another book and that person, it's taken them 20, 30 years to get this wisdom, this knowledge. Now I have what they know. I have what I learned from this book, and I have what I've learned from my life and my experiences. I read another book. Now I have what they know and what they've experienced and what they've learned. And then I have the other book, and then I have this book, and then I have, and the more you read books, now you have all these lessons and all these experiences and all this wisdom that took people 20, 30, 40 years. And so if I happen to come and cross a road that they crossed, I can glean from their wisdom so I don't have to make the same mistake that they made. And when you understand this, and listen, let me be totally transparent with you. Let me be honest with you. I don't really like reading. I just like the results of reading. It's like working out. I really don't like going to the gym, but I like the results of going to the gym. And so when you guys realize that, guys, this is when you become unstoppable. No one can stop you. What's up, Fatima? No one can stop you when you do the things that no one can stop you from doing. No one can stop you. And that's how you become unstoppable. That's how you become unstoppable. Do the things that no one can stop you from doing. And the more you begin to do those things, you literally become unstoppable. You literally become unstoppable. All right, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me on Instagram, on Periscope, on Facebook. I love you guys. Go out there and have a fantastic evening, and I'll talk to you guys later.